So excited to be welcoming back Cynthia Thurlow to the show. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And now, if you missed the last episode, you definitely have to go back and listen because we took a deep dive into intermittent fasting. Everything you're going to want to know and more about intermittent fasting. Actually, not everything. You're going to have to wait for her book to come out to know everything. So stay tuned for that. But today, we're actually going to touch on the top 3 tips when starting intermittent fasting because I think a lot of women think, oh, it's a great weight loss tool. It's great when I'm in perimenopause, like we were talking in the last episode. And we really made it clear in the last episode, it's not just about weight loss. There's a lot of other benefits, and just a side effect is the weight loss. So that is something I want to get clear starting right off. But it can seem really overwhelming to start this new eating way of eating. So if you can give us your top 3 tips and how to even get started, we would all appreciate that.
Yeah. So I would say number one, if you're not sleeping through the night, don't attempt intermittent fasting.
Hmm.
Intermittent fasting is a great strategy, but it's still a stressor to the body. And so if you're not getting adequate rest, and by that I mean 7, 8 hours a night of high quality sleep, I would address the sleep first.
Hmm.
And then if you're sleeping through the night, then you can start fasting. So that's number one. Number two is stop snacking. And I know
Hmm.
that seems kind of trite, but for most people that have been spending years and years and years eating 3 meals a day and snacks in between, taking those snacks out is one of the things that's going to be hugely beneficial as we try to restructure your meals. And then number three, I would say ensuring that your meals are properly balanced. So you're sleeping through the night, you're not snacking. Number three is you are consuming animal based protein and healthy fats with each meal. Carbohydrates, I'm not anti carb, but I remind people that when you are transitioning into intermittent fasting, you're going to do best if you are having less carbs. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean no carbs, that means less. So if you're consuming on average 200 to 300 grams of carbs a day, which is what the average American does between sugar sweetened beverages and food, I would encourage you to start scaling that back. And
Hmm.
alongside with that, I think it's really critically important. So this would be number four, really critically important that while you're fasted, you are consuming plenty of water and electrolytes. Electrolytes are not negotiable. I
Hmm.
find the people that do best, obviously, I sell an electrolyte product. There are other brands out there that are really high quality. You want an unflavored brand while you're fasting. Yes, adding sea salt can help with your water, but there are more electrolytes than sodium and chloride. There are things like magnesium, potassium, etc.
Hmm.
And consuming electrolytes during the day. Like I was explaining to someone, I think on Instagram today, that I drink electrolytes throughout the day, and I will have unflavored electrolytes during my fasting window. I prefer stevia sweetened electrolytes during my feeding window. I do that throughout the day. I drink a ton of water, and that allows me to hold on to some of the water and the electrolytes. Really critically important. But those would be my top four for fasting success. Make sure you're sleeping through the night, make sure you're no longer snacking, restructure your meals, make sure you're getting water and electrolytes. And those four things can make a huge difference. A lot of times when people come to me that have been fasting on their own and they're not having success, those can be huge. I mean, they're not big things, but they are big things. And those can really impact your success.
Yeah, and it's something that people look over all the time, like, "Oh, what's the importance of sleep?" It's so important. And I think 2 things kinda came out of that for me is, number 1, taking away that whole concept that's out in the mainstream world, and maybe not anymore, but I still hear it, eating every 2 to 3 hours, and so
No,
that's where kind of the snacks,
no.
eat your breakfast, snack, eat your lunch, snack, eat your dinner, dessert. It's like, start by taking those snacks out, right? That would be one easy way.
Yeah.
And number 2, awareness. Like, are you hungry when you have those snacks? Because I think a lot of times for women, we're just getting these habits of, oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours. I have to eat something. No, no, no. Are you hungry?
Right.
Are you really hungry to eat? And that really says a lot to what your meal was like before, the meal prior. How nutritious was it? Is it full of sugars? Of course, you're probably going to be hungry in 2 to 3 hours,
Yeah.
right? Versus the animal protein, healthy fats, you're probably not going to be hungry for at least 6 hours. So,
And I think that's an important distinction that if you're, putting your meals together and you're hungry in between, you need to bump up your protein first and
yeah.
then, bump up your healthy fats. And as Renee and I kind of talked about in our podcast episode, healthy fats are probably the only macronutrient I encourage people to be very mindful of portion
Mhm.
sizes because it's very easy to overdo nuts and cheese in particular. Like those are the two healthy fats where people can really create this slippery slope. They're delicious, they're
Mhm.
salty, they kind of light up your taste buds. It's hard to mitigate a portion size. So really being mindful in particular about those two.
A little caveat there, what I've noticed personally, because I love nuts, that if I get unsalted nuts, like raw nuts, they're a lot easier to control how much I eat versus the salted. And same with chocolate. I love chocolate. I always get a dark chocolate, but the darker the chocolate, it's more bitter. So I find that with dark chocolate, I can have a little square and I'm fine. Like I've had my sweetness, like versus like a milk chocolate, which you can't stop, but you need to eat the whole bar, right?
Yep,
So there's
totally.
definitely a difference of even these little tweaks of like, okay, why can't I stop eating the nuts? Well, the salt really adds a nice flavor to them. And, and the other perception out there is, oh, it's a healthy fat. I can have as much as I want. Or, and again, too much of anything is not a good thing. So,
No, it's so true. And I'm kind of like I'm very salt minded. So for
mhm,
me, like dark chocolate and salt is like intoxicating.
mhm,
Salted nuts, intoxicating.
mhm.
So literally measure out my macadamia nuts that are salted. I put them in a bowl, and when they're gone, they're gone. And even better if I do a little bit of dark chocolate with that, like that just makes me very happy.
Yeah, and then you know what you can't stop at, so you measure it out, knowing that I would go back after handful too, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, if we do raw unsalted, I can control myself a little bit better."
Exactly.
These little
Exactly.
things, and they make such a huge difference, such a
Yeah,
huge difference. So,
absolutely.
well, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And again, where are you found on website, social media, all the things, so my audience can come find you?
Yep. So www.cynthiathurlow.com is my newly relaunched website. We moved over from another website platform. I'm active on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, on my Facebook. I have a Facebook group that's Intermittent Fasting Lifestyle / my name. And then I have a great podcast called Everyday Wellness, where I get to interview all sorts of really cool people, just like Renee does. So,
Absolutely. That's such a good podcast. So once you get done listening to this episode and Cynthia's last episode that we recorded, if you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go and check out her podcast because she has such amazing guests. And if you like this information, you're going to get even more of it on her podcast. So thank you so much.
thank
I
you.
appreciate you. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. Definitely.
Absolutely.